shortly after opening Wanderlust Creamery, an ice cream shop, I had relatives from my dad's side. Backstory, my father passed away when I was really young, and so I'm not very close to my father's side of the family, and I don't really know them very well. But after they found out I opened an ice cream business, a lot of them reached out to me to congratulate me and tell me, oh, you're following in your grandfather's footsteps. I was like, what do you mean? And that's when they told me, yeah, you didn't know that your grandfather was a food chemist for Asia's biggest ice cream brand from the 1920s all the way through the 1970s. He created a lot of like the staple flavors that exist in Asia today. I could never explain why I was always obsessed with like flavors, and I guess it's in my background. It's in my blood.
Welcome to the Clean Body Podcast. I'm Lauren Kelly, a certified nutrition therapist and soon-to-be specialized holistic cancer coach with a certification in cancer biology from UC Berkeley. I am so grateful that you're here. This podcast introduces you to the souls and brains behind some of the cleanest food, beverage, and lifestyle products on the market. Because what you put on, in, and around your body matters. From cookies, bread, and mushroom superfoods, to adaptogenic lozenges, clean medicines, organic mattresses, and fluoride-free toothpastes, we'll explore how the brands came to be, how scientific studies drove decisions about ingredients and materials, and most importantly, how the products support all the physical and mental microscopic miracles that occur in your body every minute of every day. Thank you for being here. Let's get this started. Welcome back to the Clean Body Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Kelly. Thank you again for being here for episode number 8. And I have to tell you, there could not have been a more timely week to release this episode. It is funny how synchronicity works. But if you hadn't heard of Droplet before, you may have heard about them in the last couple of days. There's been a lot happening, especially on Instagram. The women and minority-owned brand, pioneered by Celeste Perez and Adrienne Borlongan, has been publicly at war with PepsiCo on social media and has been getting tons of community support by consumers and celebrities, including Mandy Moore, Minka Kelly, and Shay Mitchell. So let me just rewind a little bit and tell you a story, including a big food industry controlling conglomerate coming in to allegedly squash a small, scrappy, just starting to take some ground startup that is both women and minority owned. The main players of this non-fictional and all too common story include Celeste, Adrian, their sparkling adaptogenic drink brand formerly called Dewdrop and now known as Droplet, and PepsiCo. Celeste and Adrian launched a little CPG brand. If you don't know the acronym, it stands for Consumer Packaged Goods, just before the pandemic. As children of immigrants and doctors, and as women who had experienced the benefits of adaptogens firsthand, they wanted to deliver the traditional herbal benefits of adaptogens in the form of a functional, sparkling wellness drink. But they hit a snag when attempting to trademark their initial brand name, Dewdrop. According to email records shared by Celeste on Instagram, even though the United States Patent and Trademark Office saw no issues with the name Dewdrop, PepsiCo legally went after them to change their name, citing concerns that consumers would confuse the name Dewdrop with Mountain Dew. Mind you, completely different drinks, different packaging, different ingredients. I digress. Not able to fork out the insane amount of money that it would have took them to fight PepsiCo on this matter, and after failed attempts to negotiate and compromise with them, Celeste and Adrian were forced to take the hit and change their name. It's worth mentioning that they had already sunk a ton of money into that branding and packaging. But anyways, they moved on. Dewdrop became Droplet, and their mission to help improve the mood, focus, and clarity of human beings with non-toxic, all-natural herbs and botanicals went on. Then, about a year later, in February 2021, according to purchase and email records shared on the Droplet Instagram page, they received an order for their sample kit from a PepsiCo employee. It seemed a little bit like a red flag, so they emailed the PepsiCo employee to confirm that the order was made with pure intentions to support small businesses and not for ulterior motives, say research. Ultimately, Droplet ended up fulfilling and sending the order. Just last week, PepsiCo announced their latest drink, Soul Boost, a functional sparkling water brand that, according to Droplet founder Celeste, shares a number of similarities in packaging and messaging, including organic shapes, millennial colors, and the former Dewdrop typeface or font. Celeste also pointed out that their website bears aesthetic and navigational similarities. Words used in marketing overlap with those that Celeste has used in interviews or seen on the Droplet site, and Asian-inspired flavors for Soul Boost are also congruent with those found in Droplet. In just a couple of days, infuriated Instagrammers have stood behind Droplet and called PepsiCo out for releasing what looks to be a very similar product, filling the drink's newest Instagram page with thousands of comments like, "Absolutely disgraceful what you have done. You should be ashamed." "Wow, stealing from a minority-owned business. How do you sleep at night?" "Blatant theft and corporate greed by PepsiCo. Support drink Droplet instead." It goes on and on. If you want to see the comments, go check them out. There are literally thousands. Now, there's a couple things to unpack here. First, I should mention this account is coming from the Droplet side. At the time of recording this, PepsiCo has not released a statement. That's done. Second, we need to talk about the general landscape of the CPG industry, which is monopolized by 11 conglomerates. And third, the nutritional differences that exist between Soul Boost and Droplet. Okay, so the CPG industry. Nearly every household name brand in the United States that you know is owned by one of 11 companies. Those are Nestle, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, Mars, Kellogg, General Mills, Coca-Cola, Mondelez International, Kraft, and of course, PepsiCo. And brands you wouldn't even realize are owned by those big conglomerates. For example, Nestle owns L'Oreal, Coca-Cola owns Honest Tea, Zico Coconut Water and Smart Water. Procter & Gamble's wholly owned subsidiary, the Clorox Company, owns Burt's Bees. Johnson & Johnson owns Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day. Kellogg owns RX Bars. And PepsiCo owns Kavita Kombucha, Quaker Oats, Frito-Lay, Yum brands including KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut. They also own Gatorade, Tropicana. The list goes on and on. According to their website, they own over 20 brands. I think that number is much bigger now. And their estimated retail sales generate more than $1 billion every year. Now, to be fair, most of these brands were startups at one point and sold to these big conglomerations. PepsiCo, though, also has been pushing pretty hard into the functional water category, releasing 4 other brands in just the past year. I explain this because it's important to know that the money you spend buying pre-packaged foods off of grocery store shelves is going straight into the same dozen pockets again and again and again. Okay, let's break down the ingredient list now. There are some big differences between what PepsiCo is offering and what Droplet founders created. For example, Droplet uses real fruit purees, while Soul Boost uses juice concentrate. Juice concentrate is more processed than purees. Celeste goes more into this during the interview, but essentially, in order to make juice concentrates, fruit is heated into a syrup. Heating, especially at very high temperatures, kills many, if not all, of the nutrients and beneficial enzymes that are found in naturally occurring foods. So all you're left with at the end is sugar. On top of that, Soul Boost contains preservatives and natural flavors, which can often contain up to 100 different ingredients that the FDA doesn't require be listed on the label, while Droplet uses organic coconut nectar, vanilla bean paste, organic cocoa, and other natural food sources for flavoring. Okay, this has become a very long introduction, but I thought it was really important for all of you, the listeners, to know what's happening right now with the Droplet brand. During the interview, we don't discuss PepsiCo. The interview was recorded over a month ago before the shit really hit the fan. Instead, we focus on what inspired the functional wellness drink brand, how heritage and cultural traditions drive what Celeste and Adrienne are trying to do now, how adaptogens and unprocessed ingredients benefit your bodies, and how Celeste and Adrian have both used foods to overcome their own chronic conditions from prediabetes to hair loss. It's a really great conversation. I feel honored that they came on the podcast, and I'm behind them. Support Drink Droplet. Now, if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, review, rate, and you guys can check out and support Droplet by going to drinkdroplet.com or visiting their Instagram page at drinkdroplet. You can also follow the founder, Celeste Perez. She's doing a lot of publicity around this PepsiCo debacle. She is at Celeste Perez, CelestePerez. And lastly, you can follow me on Instagram at Holistic Lauren Kelly or the podcast at The Clean Body Project. If you have any questions at all about what I've talked about in this episode with the CPG landscape, with juice concentrates versus purees, you can shoot me a DM and we can have a conversation about it. Okay, that's enough from me and this introduction. Let's jump into the interview. Celeste, Adrian, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Thank you both so much for doing this today. I know that I have shared this with you, Celeste, but Droplet was a huge inspiration in starting this podcast. It was actually when I tried Droplet products and drinks for the first time organically. Nobody sent them to me. I was just interested in the product and I was stoked. Like, first, the packaging was so cute. I loved the pamphlet inside, and then the drinks were so good. And seeing how my following reacted to me sharing just these drinks that I really liked is where I got the idea for the Clean Body podcast. So this is very exciting because you were my inspiration. So I thank you both for that.
Well, thank you. No, really, thank you. It was so exciting for us to find, I mean, one, for somebody to find us organically, and two, for it to resonate with who, you speak to. That was super important for us to just experience. And so I'm really glad that we connected and are able to connect and chat.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you both could be on here with me. But before we get to talking about the Droplet products and just the evolution of the brand and all the thought and science that went into formulating the products, I'd love to hear how each of you came to this health and wellness world. So, Celeste, do you want to start? And then Adrienne, I'd love to hear your story as well.
So, well, I used to be a huge stress case. I have a branding business. I've actually pretty much done any job that's been thrown my way for the last 10 years because I'm a child of the recession and we had to do what we had to do. And that led me to a lot of things that that were just kind of stressful. And I would pack my plate up with things just so I could make a living. And I wasn't taking good care of myself. And it wasn't until I, ended up in the hospital a couple of times actually with all of these issues that I didn't even know, like that no one could really explain. Um, it wasn't until that I had the wake up call where I was like, you know what, actually, this is all stress related. The way I eat is stress related, having junk food all the time, and the way that I can't sleep, it's all stress related, and it all was just taking its toll on my health. And that's when I discovered adaptogens and really learned about that, and as well as yoga and meditation, and just all of this was kind of in an effort to save myself because I wasn't doing well. I was doing a lot, but I wasn't doing well. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't happy. And that's how I got into the health and wellness space.
Thank you for sharing that. I think so many people can probably resonate with that, or so many listeners right now are experiencing that and how their life is just being driven by stress. And if you want to get scientific, cortisol just taking over everything,
Totally. Right? Oh God. Yeah. I don't miss my fupa at all.
Oh my goodness. Hey, nothing wrong with the fupa if you're healthy.
Right. No, but mine was absolutely a stress fupa. And so as soon as I started fixing all of this, it literally, the fupa went away in like days. I was like, wow, that is some ab crunching magic.
Well, that was probably inflammation that like was being created
Totally.
by your stress
Absolutely.
levels. Like, stress impacts
Yeah.
your digestion, like when you're stressed, you're in that fight or flight mode, not the rest and digest mode. So you probably had a lot of inflammation going on in that gut area.
Totally. Well, I don't miss her.
Adrienne, I'd love to hear your story.
Well, I never really planned on getting into the health and wellness space. Celeste actually roped me in because we have a history of working together. She helped me conceptualize another business I have called Wanderlust Creamery. But aside from that, I think it coincided with a time in my life where I realized how much more healthy I needed to be. All my life, I've just been one of those people where I could eat whatever I wanted, with no consequence, no visual consequence on my body. And, after having 3 kids in the span of 2 years,
Brave woman.
Yeah.
I know. I'm always just like, how does she do it?
That definitely took a toll on my body, and it changed. And I kind of feel like it brought me back down to earth. Like, listen, you can't just keep doing whatever you want, eating whatever you want. I didn't bounce back. I always thought like, oh, whatever, I'll be one of those people that just bounces back. And it wasn't that quick. And it probably has to do with my age too. I'm 35 now. And so my body's not what it used to be. And I was kind of forced to make that conscious decision to, not eat ice cream every day, not drink as much, make healthier choices when it comes to meals. And I actually started taking ashwagandha, which is like probably one of the most popular adaptogens, right before Celeste introduced me to the concept of Droplet. And I think I feel like everything happens for a reason. It just these two things, happened at the same time. And yeah.
The universe collided and brought them all together. I always love that when we find these like moments of just it was always meant to be. And it was, some people might not believe in fate or there's a reason behind everything, but I do. And so I think those things transpired in your life. Maybe your mind was becoming more open to the health and wellness realm, and these thoughts and ideas were rumbling around your brain. And so even if it had been at a different stage in your life, you wouldn't have been as excited or open to the opportunity. It would have been perceived differently. So the domino effect transpired exactly how you guys needed it to. But I do want to point out that all 3 of our bodies, either with FUPAs or not bouncing back quickly after pregnancy, are miracles. And it's just such a cool, incredible, beautiful thing. So the fact that you've both gone on your own journeys to learn how to support it in a better way is kind of the takeaway. Like, our bodies are always changing, and we're always going to fall off the bandwagon and eat too much ice cream or drink too much alcohol. But it's about bouncing right back,
Yeah, but for Adrienne, the ice cream situation is it's like pounds and pounds and pounds of it.
Yeah.
And like, how many flavors do you have on the menu? Like 30?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that makes us creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because Adrienne, you own you started an ice cream shop, right?
Yeah. Kind of quite the opposite from the health and wellness space, but I think I bring a different, perspective, I guess.
Well, I was going to say ice cream is part of my wellness plan. Like, it's so embarrassing when she comes to my house and she looks in my freezer and it's just literally there's a shelf of just her ice cream. But yeah, for me, it's totally part of how I recuperate.
I have not tried your ice cream yet, but I looked at the flavors and they look delicious. And agreed, life is all about balance. I was saying on an interview earlier, any kind of diet that's making you completely remove or restrict things from your lifestyle probably isn't the diet you should be on, because it's about balance. Like, I love pizza and burritos and sushi, and sometimes I'm going to eat those. Not sometimes, weekly. I'm going to eat those. But I do want to get into the story of Droplet. So I'd love to hear the origin story. How did the inspiration of Droplet come to you?
Yeah. So, well, I had just, really started to see results and changes, really great changes in my life from, having started looking into herbal medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, even just like Filipino cultural traditional medicine. Like, that was actually just stuff we grew up with. That suddenly, with these new eyes of having, looking at adaptogens as a scientific from a scientific perspective, suddenly with these new eyes, I'm like, oh my God, we're putting Moringa in our tinola, which is like a chicken soup, basically. We're putting that in our bone broth, and that's bone broth. Like literally, it was kind of just all making connections. And I was like, this is just how we have always eaten. And it seemed like we'd forgotten that, it seemed like we want to have these things as supplements, or think of food in that way, where we don't think of food as completely nourishing, that we all need these extra parts. Um, so I was, making these mushroom drinks every morning, and they don't taste very good, especially like not, a few years ago when this wasn't as popular. You'd be finding ground up whatever it was, and it would be, in hot water, maybe with your coffee. And at the time, I had stopped drinking coffee. I was having like 5 cups a day, and that also really hurt my body. It was hyperacidic. I couldn't, like the caffeine actually accumulates in your body. So if you've been having that many cups of coffee for a year, it takes a long time for that to come out of your system. And so, a lot of the adaptogen and mushroom coffee alternatives were not going to work for me. And I did that though for months before I was like, this can't be how this is going to be. Like, this can't be how this has to taste. And I was looking around, and there really wasn't anyone who had done, adaptogens in the way that I needed it, which was, I care a lot about beautiful things. I care a lot about flavor. Adrienne and I have our background in food and beverage. So like, yeah, I'm not going to make a habit out of something that doesn't taste good. And I realized too that I'm a lot like a lot of women, where there are so many women out there who aren't, completely in this natural, holistic, alternative space. A lot of products really always spoke to that girl who in my head, I'm like, she's an ethereal. She, already does yoga. She isn't intimidated by these things. And I was on the other side of that, looking at that girl being like, I'm intimidated by all this stuff. How do I why isn't there something that speaks to me and my values?
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, that really was something that was beautiful, elegant, wholesome, but not in a way that only that only spoke to the insider, because I felt like people needed to know that these things work. People needed to know that there was science behind this, and we wanted to approach it from that way, where it's a lifestyle product versus a medical clinical supplement, or on the other hand, performance supplement, which is the other side of adaptogens, where it's always in men's drinks, or always in energy drinks. That was not something that really, for me, especially now, like that wasn't something I needed. I needed balance. I needed calm. I didn't need to be hyped up all the time, which is, even today, that's how a lot of the drinks are coming out. And so, so after, my 1000th cup of dirt juice, I hadn't talked to Adrienne in a while, because she'd had her kids, and like she had her business. It was like, for her, I would look at her life and be like, oh my gosh, so much going on. But I was like, there is something interesting here, and I feel like if we could come together with her food science background, we'd be able to make something important, and important for especially women, because I just think that if we could save the world if women weren't as stressed out. And and I was just like, okay, and if we figured this out, we could make a huge difference. And that's when I called Adrienne, and she had literally, how your babies were like 3 months old. Like,
yeah, I had just given birth.
She was like, I'm a little busy right now, but can we chat in like a month? And I was like, yeah, I will wait. Like, no big deal. um, and that's where it went from there. We really, our first goal was to have something that tastes good. Tastes good, and also had the benefits that you could really, it would really make a difference for someone. And so, Adrienne was a big piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, I definitely want to dig into that. I love that you said that a big part of Droplet maybe unintentionally or intentionally was this inclusiveness. Like you don't need to already feel like you're this holistic person or live this holistic lifestyle to enjoy these products and understand the benefits that they have on your body. It's for everybody. Maybe more targeted towards women, but it is really something that everybody can benefit from.
Yeah, so that was a big part of it. And then and as we did more research, I ended up becoming a certified holistic nutritionist to really make sure that what we were doing was, because like my parents, our families all are medical, like they're all in the medical field. And there was no way we were going to be launching something, putting, our investment and time into something that didn't have science behind it. And that was what was really exciting about what we were working on. Yeah, but so that was how we got started pretty much. It's that's leading up to, where Adrienne can talk about how when she has stepped in and we started making the flavors.
Yeah, I want to hear about those first few couple weeks, Adrienne, when you joined the team and what was rumbling through your mind as a food scientist and how you could achieve the product that you guys have.
Yeah. So just a little background on food science. When I went to school, everyone I was going to school with wanted to be a registered dietitian. So it's basically the same classes. And I had no interest in health. I just wanted to make things taste good. I wanted to make, how do you make a fry crispy and stay crispy? How do you I'm just a big foodie. And so I think coming into this helped because, my main goal is to make something taste good. And then if it's good for you, even better. And so when I first came on, I think Celeste had laid out all the adaptogens for me to try on its own.
Like all of them. like maybe 15 or so, 20 of them. Like literally anything I get my hands on. I was like, this is what we're doing.
Holy basil, this is schisandra, this is some kind of mushroom. And I was just like, wow. And she's like, and this is what when people want to eat adaptogens, this is what it tastes like when they eat it. And I was like, wow, how are we going to make this taste good? And we decided to match. And then she went through like how every adaptogen functions in your body, what it does for you, mood wise. And we thought it was fun to play with, like, well, if this makes you happy, what's a taste? What taste is happy? Flavor that we can associate with happiness. And if this adaptogen makes you balance, well, what flavor profile is balanced in my mind? And so we went off of that. We based the flavors based on feeling.
I love that. That's so cool.
And so we have Pretty Happy, which is with rhodiola. And then I thought, like, well, what makes me happy? And I think we came up with something like a vacation, a sunny, bright vacation. And that's when we came up with passion fruit, vanilla, and chocolate cacao. And a really interesting flavor profile. You wouldn't think that something very acidic and then something like creamy with like a indulgent like back note would come together. But when you combine those two flavors together, it's pure happiness in my mind. And then we had Pretty Balanced with ashwagandha. And, I thought, I don't know, I think Celeste suggested like taking a bath. And I'm like, what's something that's like beautifully scented, but that's also edible? And we went through the usual rose, lavender, but those have been done before. And I thought, verbena is like it's like a traditional soap scent, I would say, but then actually it's like a tea in Ecuador and Peru. And so we thought, something peachy with lemon verbena, and then your favorite, which is the Pretty Bright, yuzu. I can't think of anything that's brighter than citrus, and the mother of citruses, yuzu. It's like a combination of lemon, orange, tangerine, like all the citruses combined. I thought that was like the ultimate like bright. So that's
I think that is so cool. That's a really interesting process of attaching actual experiences and then figuring out the taste associated with those experiences and how you can put that into your drinks with adaptogens. I haven't heard anyone say that they approach flavors that way. So that's so cool. And I do
It's
have to
our
say,
trade secret.
oh, well, shit. Nobody else take their trade secret.
No, it's all good.
I will say I had pretty balanced, I think last week, like pretty late at night, and I slept like a baby that night. I don't know if it was the drink or if I was exhausted, but it has ashwagandha in it. So I'm kind of giving it credit to the drink.
That's awesome. It's funny too. So we did all of that based on feelings. And then my science brain was like, we got to know if this is, we got to back this up. And so,
Mm-hmm.
We did all of that instinctively and intuitively, which is what I love about it, right? Like we thought that all of this worked together, that's just how it should be. And after doing the research, we found that, in Pretty Happy, for example, passion fruit is used traditionally as an, anti-anxiety, like almost like an antidepressant in South American cultures. If you're feeling sad, they'd be like, here, eat passion fruit every day. Like that would be their prescription for it. And same thing with yuzu, right? Where like yuzu, just the scent of it, they've done a lot of studies in Japan because they're so proud of this, native yuzu plant. And just the scent of it makes calms you down and also helps women with PMS. Like, and so we were finding that all the components we'd put together all had a meaning outside of, just flavor, all from all different cultures. And again, from all traditional medicine, like herbal medicine, just from those kinds of backgrounds. And so, I don't know if that was divine or if that was just like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? I'm not sure what
Mm-hmm.
that was, but when we even, just even culturally, right, where we're like, oh, it has passion fruit in it, and if I'm, talking to people from South America, they're like, oh my God, that's what my grandma would tell me to do when I was feeling sad,
Mm-hmm.
and but that's really like, I think that's, I hope no one else is thinking like this. We're like, let's try to protect our brand.
I don't think most of my listeners will be formulating adaptogenic drinks in their kitchens. So I think you should be okay. But I think that it's just like it was probably subconsciously weaved into your DNA, like from just how everything, our genetics get passed down from our ancestry. I think that there's some kind of like subconscious knowledge that we have around holistic healing and functional medicine.
Oh, for
And like
sure.
you said, it's flavors associated with your upbringing and your childhood. And so even if you didn't know the science behind those ingredients and how they impact your mood or your behavior, someone else before you did, and that was just woven into your subconscious decisions when you were making these formulations.
It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, Adrienne, especially, like, tell her about your lineage and how you found out about how you became,
yeah.
a food scientist.
Oh, so I, shortly after opening Wanderlust Creamery, an ice cream shop, I had relatives from my dad's side. Backstory: my father passed away when I was really young, and so I'm not very close to my father's side of the family, and I don't really know them very well. But after they found out I opened an ice cream business, a lot of them reached out to me to congratulate me and tell me, "Oh, you're following in your grandfather's footsteps." I was like, "What do you mean?" And that's when they told me, "Yeah, you didn't know that your grandfather was a food chemist for Asia's biggest ice cream brand, like from the 1920s all the way through 1970s. He created a lot of like the staple flavors that exist in Asia today. It's kind of like the Breyers of Asia."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I literally got chills.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's crazy.
in my DNA. So and I could never explain why. I was always obsessed with like flavors and like I would like peruse the aisle of the grocery store and be like, I wonder who comes up with these potato chip flavors and how come they haven't made this flavor? Like it was just weird. Like I guess it's in my background. It's in my blood.
That is such a beautiful story. That is so cool. We just think about like what's our purpose on earth and why are we here and where do these decisions we make come from? And obviously, we'll probably never have the answers to those, but it's stories like that that make me believe that everything in our ancestry and in our past, working up to where we are right now, like it all compounds on one another and helps our human race evolve and creates who we are from
Mm-hmm.
the inside out. Like it's just so magical. It's so cool.
I agree.
Celeste, I want to hear a little bit more too about your holistic coaching certification and
Yeah.
specifically when you were going through that program, what ingredients you were learning about that you knew were in conventional drinks that really surprised you and that kind of drove some of your decisions when you and Adrienne were coming up with the formulations.
Yeah. Well, I think especially growing up Filipino, food is so much a part of our culture. And I don't know, like being healthy, actually, healthy food is not really something that is part of our culture, which is kind of interesting because food is, you use it, it's a celebratory, it's your love language. It's, you know what I mean? Like food is not just, hey, I need to do this to nourish myself. And so I didn't grow up thinking that food was nourishing. I just kind of food was something we actually, it's like an action. And my parents are doctors, my parents were doctors, that's my lineage. And it's interesting to me to look back and think, how did we not, like, because because this food made us happy, whether it was processed or not, we were eating it. And looking around at my family and everybody having diabetes and heart disease and all of these very diet related problems. Um, I, it was just the tip of the iceberg because I knew what road I was going down. I was actually already pre-diabetic. Thanks coffee. I like my coffee with
Really?
yeah, I like my
Oh,
coffee with 2
okay.
scoops of sugar. And, you have 5 of those a day. That's a lot of sugar. I was already pre-diabetic. And so, yeah, I really had to look around and be like, take stock of what I was doing. And I realized that unless I learned about it in a real, like, I'm a student, I'm a lifelong student. I love learning. And so unless I learned about it in a real way and not through like self study, not through like, maybe my friend told me like we should drink this, that it would open a world to me in a way that I could be confident about it. Like to be real with you, I was the opposite of a kid who watched a documentary about, animals and turned vegan. Like that's what, how some kids will watch a documentary, they're like, oh my God, I'll never eat meat again. That was so crazy. I watched a documentary about agriculture and it turned me carnivore. So and so I really made it to pretty much like my entire adult life not eating a vegetable, not eating fruits, not knowing even the names of most of them, like not basic fruits. Um, yeah, it was funny. My brother's like, "What's this?" I was like, "It's a squash." He's like, "It's not." And it looks like a squash. He's like, "It's actually a pumpkin." And I was like, "It looked like a squash to me. It looks like the same family." But like just I had no knowledge of this. And for me, I needed to break through that fear because by the time you're like 27, 28, like not having had a strawberry, you're just like, "Okay, the hell is going on here?" Like it's actually irrational at this point. And so how do I break through that? I soothe through knowledge. And that's why I ended up starting to learn about holistic nutrition, which when I assigned a purpose to the things I ate, it made me so much more conscious about what I was doing and giving to my body. And so like even yesterday, I mean, like we definitely had fried chicken yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm gonna out us. Yeah, we definitely had fried chicken yesterday. It's not something I do every day like I used to do. Um, but at the same time, like I don't look at that fried chicken and think, oh, this is just trash. I look at, hey, it is a lean protein. It's great. We also got some carbs in there. There were pickled, there's like sauerkraut on it. That's great. Probiotics, you know, and I can break it down like that now versus being like, I'm just going to eat this, whatever it does to my body is whatever happens. Yeah, but really when I started learning about adaptogens, that's when I really started to understand that what we eat becomes who we are and how we work in this world. Like I know that I used to spend days feeling asleep, and that's because I'm looking at my diet now, having this knowledge, and I'm like, it's because I only ate carbs. If I was eating, toast in the morning and in and out for lunch, and because there was like the only food place I could eat at during lunchtime where I used to work was In and Out. It was like the only thing in Vernon, where it's like a warehouse district. Like In and Out for lunch, and for dinner also maybe eating cake, because I actually also it didn't show up in my body, which is why it was so surprising when I became pre-diabetic, because I was like, but I'm under 100 pounds and I'm fine. It didn't show up, but it did show up metabolically. It did show up internally. It showed up on my skin. It showed up in how sick I would be all day. And I haven't been I haven't felt that way in years, thank God, and it was a very simple but difficult change. I think a lot of people have you're attached to how you eat. This is how you were raised. This is what you do with your social groups. So you're attached to how you eat, and so changing that is actually really tough. But that's how I ended up doing the holistic nutritionist thing. I needed to learn because there was a lot that I didn't know, and I wanted to learn it from educational standpoint, like an academic standpoint, so that I could also help other people, explain to other people the same things that I'm learning that might also save them.
Yeah, that's great. And like you said, it is so much about intuitive eating. Like if you want to eat that fried chicken, there are benefits in that fried chicken, and then just support your body later. If you eat something that doesn't have benefits, just support your body, listen to it, know that you need to eat an extra couple of vegetables the next day. Like it's not the end of the world. Don't create stress around the food that you're eating, because that just sends you into, fight or flight mode, and you can never actually rest and digest and just enjoy the experience that you're having. But yeah, change can be scary. People are scared of doing it wrong or not understanding or not being able to figure it out. And it's scary to get started on something, but once you start, it's a snowball effect. Thank you for sharing that story. Adrienne, I want you to peel back the curtain of the kitchen a little bit and tell me about your process. And actually, you had the emotion attached to the drinks you wanted. You had the flavors in mind that you wanted to create, and you had the adaptogens that you wanted to infuse into these drinks. But what was the actual process of being in the kitchen, basically doing chemistry with all of these ingredients and trying to figure out how to get a good tasting product that also helped people reap the benefits of the adaptogens?
Yeah, honestly, it was just a really lengthy process. It literally, like, we made, for example, like for Pretty Bright, we must have made that drink like, I don't know how many times, maybe 35 times.
Yeah, even just yesterday,
Yeah.
like quite a few times.
Before we're like, okay, by the 35th time, we're like, okay, this is close. It's not even it yet. This is like close. And then here we, stage 2, maybe another 35 times. But it's really tough when you're dealing with something that needs to have a function, because you got to balance everything. Does the pH, does the acidity of this yuzu juice affect the adaptogen? Does it might be fine right when you make it, but then if it sits on a shelf for months, is it still going to be okay? When it goes through the pasteurization process, when we go to can it, when we heat it, does the adaptogen denature? It's a long and lengthy process, and it's a lot. It's a lot of sciencing, and a lot of research, and a lot of going back to the drawing board. I think we had another flavor that had violet in it. It was like violet, and for some reason we couldn't source the right elderberry to where it would work, and so we just had to scrap that one, even though it tasted so good. So
Wow. So if you have an idea for a new drink you want to go after tomorrow, how long is that process until you think you can release it into the wild?
I don't know, Celeste, maybe 3 months at minimum.
if you're lucky.
Right. Yeah, honestly, because we were lucky with these first 3 flavors. Like they came out on the same day. Like
Mhm.
we just decided that first day where we're like, okay, so now we've tasted all the adaptogens. What kind of flavors are we going to make? And these were the 3 flavors. They were part of the first batch, but it was getting them perfect that took a long time.
Mhm.
So I would say, yeah, it took about 3 months. Um, but like this is our passion. So like we could be here all day doing this, like all day just tasting the same stuff and feeling it out. And like literally, I think what's cool is that we all speak the same language, right? Where it's like I can taste something and I can relay it to her. It might sound crazy to you, but it'll sound right to us. We're like, hey, this kind of tastes fluffy, and she's like, got
Yeah.
it. And I'm like, how do we fix that?
People always say that you and I speak the same language.
Yeah. And it's funny though, because it's true. Like I will taste the same thing and we'll look at each other and I'll be like, did you taste that? And that's what's fun about doing this process, because I don't feel crazy when I'm like, I think that had too much of this. You know what I mean? Or I think this might have tasted like flowers where we didn't even put flowers in it.
Mhm.
And especially with textures and things like that. Like yeah, and so we could have these ideas, we could have these ideas and ideate all day, but to get that process, so like to get it to manufacturing level, that's where it takes a long time. You know, for if you're just making your drinks in your kitchen, that's great. You can find like 8 ounces of ginger here. You can find, whatever juice there. When you have to find 30,000 gallons of that, that's a different world, and that takes a long time. And especially during coronavirus, where all the supply chains were closed, all the borders were closed, right when we started our business, like that was really challenging. And luckily, we were able to find a lot of American, companies that create a lot of our products and source locally. Um, and that takes a while. And then from there, we have to get everything FDA, kind of FDA approval, just make sure everything's within their guidelines. And then we have to go through process authority, which basically makes sure that everything we make is is healthy, and not just healthy, but also like shelf stable, has no bacteria, like no microbes. So process authority is like, that's also a really intense process, just mostly because we have to know everything about our drink by the time we get there. And by everything, I mean like, how much sugar is in it. And by sugar, it's like, bricks and the pH, the carbonation levels, how, and we need to also be able to verbalize what this stuff tastes and feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that as you go through the manufacturing process, we have a consistent product. And it's been ups and downs, but yeah, I would say it takes about 3 months to get to where we really want it to be, but it doesn't take us any time at all to come up with these flavors.
Yeah.
So, you know how I said I don't think you have to worry about listeners like trying to compete with you.
Mm-hmm.
You just explained the entire life cycle, and I can double down on that. That sounds like an insane amount of work. If you ever need a cook in the kitchen, I'm happy to fly out and join you, because that part sounds so fun. But wow, I don't think people think about that. When they buy something at the store, they order it online. They don't think about the insane amount of work it took you to get that one box of drinks.
Yeah, and also, I don't think that it's common either. I don't think that this is how it's always done. We contacted every co-packer in the United States, basically, and we told them what our formulas were, and a lot of them were like, that's too difficult. What about you just get flavor syrups and do that? And yeah, like Adrienne can tell you, she's got a lot of co-packer experience.
Yeah. Like a lot of people were opposed to us using fresh fruit, fresh juices. They're like, well, the pulp is gonna, foam up in the tunnel, in the pasteurization tunnel. And, so many times, like even our last run, our co-packer was like, are you sure you don't want to just use flavoring and carbonated water? And we're like, no, we can't. And it even though we have a recipe, every time we go to do another run, we still have to reformulate because seasonality, we're using fresh fruits, fresh ingredients. And so just because the passion fruit from the last run was, one way doesn't mean the passion, the sugar level in the passion fruit for this run will be the same. Fruit, fresh stuff has its seasonality, and it's added an extra step for us, but we believe that it's an extra step worth taking for the end product.
Why were you so committed to that? I mean, I love that, but why were you, from a health and science perspective, so committed to not compromising on carbonated water and flavor syrups?
Well, not so much from a health perspective, but for me, taste perspective. Like if you tasted are, pretty happy with real passion fruit and real vanilla bean, you can actually see the specks of vanilla in the drink versus, flavoring and carbonated water. It's a world of
not much of an art. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from the health perspective, what we know about whole foods makes a huge difference. What we know about processed foods makes a huge difference. Like literally the only processing that happens to our drinks is that pasteurization and mixing. The fruits are pureed. They're not extracts. They're not you know what I mean? They're not concentrates.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that also in your body is way better. Like when we say, when we have white peach, it's the white peach puree that it's basic like a whole fruit juice, and your body can digest that because it knows what to do when it sees the whole fruit versus when it sees a white peach flavor. Our bodies, I think of it this way. Human beings have been on this planet for, only how long, and it's taken us how long to evolve to this point. Processed foods have only been part of our daily lives for maybe the last 60, 70 years. I don't think that's one generation only. And so our bodies aren't there yet in how to, efficiently digesting processed foods. And so for me on the health side, I was like, okay, the least amount of processing possible is the healthiest thing we can do for women right now. The healthiest thing we can do for people, and make sure and make sure that it tastes great, so that the options would be this chemical thing or this thing that's beautiful whole, actually smells good because that's what it really this is actually made with the whatever it says in, and you can see it literally, you could see it in the glass and you can piece out the parts that are in our ingredients list. And that I wanted that to be, their choice versus the choices, versus just having all of this processed stuff. I think that's the big difference between us and anybody else. You can totally have the flavor of mango, but when you have actual mango, it's a completely different experience. Your body recognizes, your body does better with.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that I'm here for that kind of mentality and approach to creating food and building a sustainable diet. And you're totally right. Our food and business industry evolved way faster than our bodies can evolve and catch up and learn what is this thing that's being put into my body, and how do I break it down, and how do I use it? And most of the time in those packaged foods, the answer is, I don't know. And so it either gets excreted or it gets stored somewhere in the body to figure it out later, which never really comes unless you put a lot of effort into, the days after that. So your body can actually process that and excrete it and detox it in the right proper way. But if you're just, I posted something on Instagram the other day that's like, don't count calories, count preservatives. And so it was just really interesting because the standard American diet, it's like in the morning, if you eat these standard American popular foods, you're getting 22 preservatives in your body. Then you're getting 20 at lunch. Then you're getting 22 with a snack and 27 at dinner. That's how many ingredients for your body to be like, never seen this before, don't know how to break it down or use it. So I'm just going to store it because it's like just an overabundance, and it's way too much stress on your body to figure those things out. So this is why part of the reason I started the Clean Body podcast, like finding those foods that are on the go, easier drinks that you can feel good about and not guilty about and know you're supporting your body is so important, because there's just so much hidden stuff in our food these days that we just don't even mindfully think about.
And that we've been misinformed about, I think,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's the big part about it is that, I think the misinformation is that eating like this is expensive. It's expensive for a reason, though. It's expensive because that's how the government wants it to be. It's expensive because that's how these huge manufacturers want it to be. Um, and that's the other part about it, where we really have to take down or at least look at food in a different perspective. Healthy food shouldn't be, it shouldn't be inaccessible,
Mhm.
but it is.
Yeah. Something I always say though to clients or friends is just it is a little more expensive when you are checking out at the grocery store or you're ordering your food online, but the amount of money you're going to save in healthcare bills, it ends up balancing
Yep.
itself out. The amount of years of quality life you're going to live, you can't put a
Yep.
price on that.
I'd rather
So
spend more money on beautiful produce than, a hospital
absolutely.
stay.
I would
Mhm.
I would love to dig into the actual science of adaptogens and the ones you specifically use in your drinks right now, and just kind of share like high level how they impact the body and fuel people throughout the day or help balance out mood and anxiety. So the first one I'd love to hit on is reishi.
Reishi, the queen. She's the queen of immortality, and that was what I loved about it. Like, if you, especially in Asian homes, reishi is something that you would just have grown up with. If you're sick, you'd put reishi in a soup, and you would have that. Um, but reishi is, for our purposes, it's a very nourishing, and also it has that stress balancing like all adaptogens do. Um, and then it also helps with immunity, which is why we've paired it with our vitamin C kind of bright yuzu drink and ginger. And so that's really what our goals were for reishi. There are so many incredible studies though on it. And what I what I love about it is that it's kind of great for everyone. The other two are, as we chose especially because they're great for women, but reishi is one of those things where anybody can enjoy that.
What about ashwagandha?
Do you want to talk about ashwagandha?
Yeah, so ashwagandha, it's supposed to just calm you down and distress you. And I take a lot of ashwagandha nightly, just the pure powder, and I just sleep so deeply, like too deeply, where I don't even hear my babies cry sometimes. I have to
That's
be woken.
That's how you know it works.
Like sometimes that's a good thing, but sometimes it's a little alarming. But I've noticed, my hair like after I gave birth, my hair was just falling out in chunks,
Mm.
and that's normal with
Hmm.
pregnancy. Because during pregnancy, your hormones change and your hair just keeps growing, and it kind of skips the falling out phase. And so after you give birth, your body's making up for that. But I noticed Celeste asked me, like, are you taking ashwagandha because it does help with hair loss? And as soon as I upped my dosage, I noticed a lot of it stop falling out.
That's amazing. I never heard of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just helps your body regulate stress better and
Mm.
just make you more calm.
And it's interesting because culturally, in especially obviously like ashwagandha is very very popular in India. You would give it to your kids. It's something that you would just take if you wanted to, for fertility reasons. Um, but that stuff, but that side of ashwagandha is not really well studied here in the U.S. It's very popular for like those folk medicine usages in those countries. And so, I mean, what should be said about adaptogens is that no matter what you do, they should be non-toxic. They should do no harm, basically. And so, ashwagandha especially just has that wonderful. It's so wonderful to be able to manage stress, and that was also my intro to into adaptogens. It was the one that I looked at out of all the adaptogens I was learning about, and I was like, this one is right for me. And if this one doesn't work, then maybe these are all crap. But this one really worked. And like she said, yeah, hair fall situation. Oh my gosh, my hair is coming all the way back. And I'm starting to see it now more in actual, like, as tinctures and serums and things like that in skincare. So it's an inside out kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. I love that we just hit on how powerful it can be for sleep as well, because I always have friends shoot me over pictures of different melatonin supplements for sleep. And I think that's kind of, that's the popular trend thing. And it has been for a long time, the melatonin, but your body, adapts to the melatonin levels that you're giving it. And so you're going to have to continuously increase the amount you're using to get the same effect, which is going to throw off your hormonal imbalances throughout. And so it might make you fall asleep, but then you're going to have some other issues because you are putting too much melatonin in your body and you're kind of messing with the hormonal imbalance of your body. And ashwagandha is just like a super herb that helps your body come back to balance naturally. You're not putting a hormone in your body and throwing off the balance in other ways. So I think that's really powerful.
I mean, that's what I love about it, right? Where it's like Goldilocks, where it's too much, too little, just right. And so regardless of what side of that seesaw you're on, all of this becomes the just right. No matter how much ashwagandha you take, no matter how much reishi you put in your system, you're never going to overdo it. I mean, it's possible, but you would need 3 pounds. just a disclaimer. I was looking into that toxicity levels and I was like, okay, but I would need to eat 3 pounds of that myself. It's literally like chewing dirt. So no, that's it would take a long time.
What about Moringa?
Moringa.
Moringa actually helped me when I was breastfeeding. It helped me produce milk. It's a galactagogue.
Wow.
Yeah, so my twins were preemies, and it's standard practice to get sent to a lactation consultant if your kids are born early or underweight. And the only thing they recommend is galactagogues. They say everything's anecdotal, like oats, oat milk. What is the other one? There's a spice that makes you kind of smell, but
cardamom.
No, it's I can't think of it right now, but it smells like maple syrup, and it makes you smell like maple syrup. It's weird, but the only thing that they said has been scientifically proven is moringa as a galactagogue. And so I would take tons of moringa when I was breastfeeding, and it did help with my supply. When I went to the lactation consultant, they said that the only thing that has been proven is moringa as a galactagogue for increasing milk supply. I wonder why, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's so interesting. I think you also bring up a good point that oats, oat milk, if you are going to try those things, you have to be really careful because most oat milk brands have a ton of preservatives in them and natural flavors. And that might not be something that you want to be consuming because what you consume naturally gets into your breast milk and goes to your baby, and your baby's microbiome is just starting to develop. So you want to be, providing the best nutrient support for them that you can. And even oats can be really difficult if there's a gluten intolerance or it didn't come from a good source. And so using moringa sounds like it would be a really safe bet that that you're doing something really good for your baby.
And moringa, I mean, culturally, so we in the Philippines, it's actually called malunggay, and it's used culinarily. You would just throw it in, and that moringa actually opened my eyes to how we cooked, like the traditional Filipino recipes that I grew up eating. I never really considered that they were actually healthy foods, and so moringa was just something you put in your soup, and like I was thinking about it, like my grandparents, my maternal grandmother, no, great grandmother, she lived to be 100, and she would eat that every day, and I was just like, oh my God, this is how we live longer lives. We cook it into our foods, and it's stuff like that. It's stuff like basil. It's what else? Bay leaf. It's herbs. It's really just spices and things on a very micro level, like turmeric also, is very popular in lots of cultural, like ethnic cuisines. And that actually is so, in terms of longevity, really helps. And for moringa, as a superfood. So moringa is not actually an adaptogen; it's a superfood, which means it's crazy nourishing. And I like to call them salad shortcuts because you could have a little bit of moringa, like a tablespoon or whatever, and or you could have an entire pound of kale and have the same similar nourishment from each. It's like like basically you want to just have really good sources for your calories, and some of us don't have time to chew on all of that kale. Yeah, but moringa is really special in that way where it's like it just packs a lot of pop and it doesn't take too much.
Yeah, I don't think most people realize too how much nutrient density and bioavailability you can get just by using natural spices and microgreens. I love microgreens.
Yeah,
And just adding that to your food. I add turmeric and black pepper to my eggs every
black pepper
day.
on everything. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I love to like mustard seed powder, can help like with cruciferous vegetables and how difficult they can be on digestion. And so you just put some on your broccoli before you pop it in the oven. It starts to digest some of those compounds that are harder for our body to break down. So it's just like easy. It's just making your body have less stress and less work to do so that I think it's like 60 to 70% of the energy in our body is used to digest the food that we consume. And so the less work we can make it do, the more energy there is for healing, which does contribute to longevity and just enjoying your everyday a little bit more because your body's not exhausted.
Yeah. And on that note, like soups actually aren't too bad. We are in a society where we think healthy eating is cold salad and leaves,
Mm-hmm.
but actually a soup is really helpful because it already helps your body digest. Cruciferous vegetables, like you were saying, like kale, is more nutritious, especially if you start cutting it up. Now, if you ate a whole
Mm-hmm.
leaf of kale, or broccoli, even, your body would actually have to wait a little longer in order to digest and take whatever it needs from that food, right? But if you were to chop it up and let it sit for a little bit, it already starts
Mm-hmm.
that process that would have started when you started chewing it. But yeah, that's why. So like soups also are really, like going back to my great great grandmother, it's like soups all day, and that's what we do. And it's funny because when you're sick, what do? You're like, oh, let's send them some soup. But
Mm-hmm.
that's because it's easier for your body to get all those nutrients when they're already a little bit broken down. It's like I said, everything. I'm not a life hacker, like not a food hacker or whatever, but I'm like, that's a salad shortcut and this is a head start. So yeah, those are the things. I think, like I said, I literally only just learned about vegetables and I had to figure out how to make it work. I went vegan for a little bit and that was really tough, but I needed to do it to know how to incorporate those kinds of foods in my life. And but there are tons of different ways, and learning about soup really changed the game for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why the protocol for gut permeability or leaky gut, as it's
Yeah.
called, popular name for it today, that's why the protocol is all warmed food. You don't want to
Hmm.
eat raw foods because it's so much harder on your digestive system to break down. And so, nourishing it with warming your food first while you're in the healing process, that's why that's the go to, move for consuming vegetables and bone broths and other really
Right.
nourishing ingredients. Yeah. So there's definitely something to be said about soup. I love soup. It can never be too hot in the desert in Phoenix for me to have soup. I am curious. I've interviewed a lot of brands that are using adaptogens today. They're getting really hot, really popular, being put in literally everything. I believe you use adaptogenic extracts in your droplet drinks. What's the
Hmm.
difference between the extracts and the powders?
Oh, it's pretty much that um, so we use plant material, right? And the powders will include the roughage. The extracts will not. The extracts will include all the different compounds that would come from eating the roughage. But they are basically because we didn't want all of the powder to settle at the bottom, which for us, like with the extracts, we'd be able to get the same in terms of bioavailability. We'd be able to get the same bioavailability putting a little more extract versus putting powder in the drinks. But we've actually, and the other thing with that is that the powder in the drinks, we've actually thought about it. We were originally going to do like a protein style, but we didn't drink protein. I don't drink protein all day. I was like, I actually want something I could do morning, noon, and night. I'm not trying to have protein before bed. I'm not trying to have protein like just for a snack. And so, but there are absolutely usages for powders. But we decided to go with the extracts, especially because we can control the quality of our extracts. So, you could do a 1-to-1, which is 1 part plant product and 1 part whatever you're using to create the distillation, whether it's water, glycerin, or alcohol, which is popular. Or you could do 3 or 10, 10 parts plant to 1 part water, which makes it really, really highly, just in terms of like high quality. So that was something that we wanted to be able to control. Yeah, Adrienne, if you wanted to chime in on on our process with these extracts.
We just wanted also to, differentiate ourselves from other adaptogenic things on the market. It was all, like Celeste said, it was all protein style, creamy, thick. And, we were just concerned that, someone wouldn't want to drink that at all. And so it's better to get some adaptogens in rather than none at all.
Yeah. I know we're going past an hour here. I could probably talk to both of you forever, and I appreciate you giving me your time. Before we get to the wrap-up questions, the quick hit questions, I'm just curious what it's like for you being women working in the food and beverage CPG industry.
Well, I'm glad we have each other. Yeah, our goal is to be the baddest, can I say this? The baddest bitches in beverage. That's like, we're always like, we're going to be the baddest bees in beverage. Okay. Like that's what we say. I'm glad we have each other though, because it is different, and I hate that. Like, I hate having to say that it is different being a woman in food and beverage. And our experience with food and beverage goes back. Like, this is not our first company. This is not our first, endeavor. It's, we've actually grown up in this world and become women in this world. And that's why it's so important for women to support other women. It's just, even the marketing of our drink has gotten pushback. We've had, on a really big pitch we did in front of, hundreds of people, one of the judges was like, well, your drink only captures half of the market. I don't think we'd be interested in it. It only speaks to women. And I was like, and that's bad. Why? And they even said that our product looked like feminine care. And I was like, and it is, so it's just been really interesting, especially breaking into traditional beverage. Traditional beverage is it's your energy drinks. It's all of this performance things. It's performance stuff. It's very male centric because people believe that males are the ones who want to do performance and to, endurance and things like that. And that we are such a small part of the market, but that's not true. And, it's honestly unbelievable that would be even something that's a problem today. It's like, 50% is not a big enough market. I don't understand how that's even how that is even a thing. But we're here to create this for women because it seems like, and we can see that no one is doing this for women authentically. They might do it because they're like, oh, we missed out on this market. Let's get this together and pander now. But for us, we know what we wanted. Like we wanted to build this from the ground up. Because as women, our issues are so different. And if a panel of men create a product for women, then it's going to leave out a lot of things. Moringa being great for breastfeeding moms. That's incredible. Like, and that's not something that you're seeing mainstream. And maybe it's something we can make mainstream. But yeah, like I said, I'm glad we have each other because we really found that the level of hustle that we have in ourselves, and the level of hustle we can push each other to be it's has really created like a sisterhood among us, and that's really cool. I really enjoy that about the space right now.
Yeah. I also think being females in a male dominated space, it gives us a little bit of competitive edge because it's
Mm-hmm.
perspective that other people don't, our competitors don't have.
Yeah, they're not going to think like this. They're not going to think about periods. We're thinking about periods. I drink. That's what rhodiola did for me. I was like, oh my God, I don't even know when I'm getting my period anymore. It does, like, I used to know a week in advance, and now it's like, oh, there it is. It doesn't, like, I'm not dealing with stuff. And men will never deal with that. They won't know how difficult it actually is. And if somebody found a solution for something like PMS, how great that would be for a lot of women. But yeah, like she said, it is a competitive advantage. They're not gonna think about things the way we do. They're not gonna create the way we have, I think, unless they work with us.
Well, we are in a wave of change, and I'm just so grateful that we have both of you representing women in a world that is very unrepresented. And Celeste, I saw, or maybe it was just the brand, the Droplet brand, call out like a clubhouse event where it was like 30 people, all men from
Oh
food
yeah.
and beverage. And I was like, good for you, because how does that even happen? How do you create a roster of speakers at your event and not be like, there's not even one woman in this roster? How
I
does
know.
that
And
happen?
that's the reason why it's different for us, right? We see that and we can call it. They're in there not noticing that there's not a woman on board, and that's the change we have to disrupt. And the odds are actually stacked against us, but I'm ready to take them on, like we've already beat the odds in so many ways. And, if only 1% of female run businesses get VC money, then I'm going to be part of that 1% this year, and that's like, that's kind of really motivating for us because we know that the world is possible. We know that world is possible. And, but yeah, up until this point, like a lot of men just aren't noticing, and it's time for a reckoning. That was a little bit
Hell
Aries
yeah.
AF as me to be like, it's time for a reckoning and I'm coming for you. But but yeah, it's like really, men just don't go around noticing these things. This is just how their worlds are. So, and BD.
Yeah. Well, I hope that all of us listening to the podcast and myself can support you in bringing down that reckoning and getting the equality that you deserve. And that's not only women listening to this podcast. If men, are behind this brand, and you can enjoy the drinks too, there's no
Mm-hmm.
problem with you enjoying them, and just like supporting what Droplet is doing, and that women deserve a seat at every table that men are at as well.
Thank you. Yes, exactly that.
Well, let's wrap this up with some quick hit questions so you guys can get onto your day.
Okay.
What does having a clean body mean to both of you?
Having a clean body to me just means balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it means that I can go anything I choose to do today. I have everything I need for. Everything I choose to do, I can go and do it. I'm not going to feel too tired. I'm not going to feel too. Yeah, it's being status quo is yes, I'm ready.
What is a lifestyle or diet habit that you have now that you couldn't live without, besides drinking Droplet?
And ice cream.
I for the past, I know it's really trendy now, but for the past 12 years, I've been an intermittent faster. So that's something I can't live without. I just noticed that I'm much more productive throughout my day, and I'm just more alert. And I feel like if I have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'll go through like slumps. Um, but I just like this is me throughout the day, and then when I have dinner, I'm just like a little wind down. But that's something I can't live without. I don't think I could ever change that about myself. Obviously, throughout my pregnancy, I couldn't do that, and it did take a toll on my productivity and work days. But that's something I can't live without.
I'm an intermittent faster too, and I am all for it.
Yeah, she's not even kidding about that. It was like 3 p.m. and I was like, "Do you want to have the sandwiches now? Like, are we gonna eat these now?" I'm always asking her, "When are we eating?" uh, I think for me, it's a cookie. It's like, okay, if I realized throughout quarantine that I was like keeping this local cookie shop in business. So like I need to have just one cookie that'd make my day. That's it.
And last question, what are other brands that you currently love and support?
Oh my gosh.
This is a tough one. I gotta think of this.
Yeah. Seconds is a great one. A friend of ours started that. It's upcycled juice roughage that's turned into crackers.
What?
I love that. Yeah, isn't that cool? So it's like, when you go to a juicery, they have all that like plant stuff in the juice and they make it into crackers. And so it closes the loop and is sustainable.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's one.
I'm trying to think. I really like this keto cereal. It's actually so good. I think it's called Magic Spoon.
Oh my gosh.
Have you had?
I think you told me you ate the entire box the first day.
I didn't grow up eating cereal. I know a lot of American kids grew up eating cereal. I didn't grow up eating cereal. To me, cereal is like dessert or a snack.
Yeah.
And so I think their branding is so beautiful. It's like, and it's supposed to be sugar free. They use allulose, the naturally occurring sugar in most fruits, but your body just doesn't digest it. But I usually can tell anything sugar free. It has a certain aftertaste, but this has no aftertaste. There's actually protein in it, and it tastes like dessert to me.
That's a great one. I'll have to look both of those up. I definitely didn't know about either of those. Last but not least, how can people get a hold of your product? How can they engage with your brand and with both of you? And what's up next for Droplet?
So we are now officially at about 100 different independent mom and pops, grocers, boutiques all over the U.S. That happened really fast for us. You can find out which one is near you at drinkdroplet.com/stockist. And what's next for us? We are also, we're also launching at a special retailer. I don't know if I can talk about that just yet, but we'll be launching at Urban Outfitters.
Well, if you find out you can't announce that, just shoot me a message and I'll bleep that out.
Yeah, so that's part of it. Like we'll be one of the first beverages for the summer collection at Urban Outfitters. And you can get us at Erewhon if you're in the LA area.
That's amazing. Well, I will be linking to your website, your social media, all the things in the show notes. And thank you to both of you. Like I said, I'm inspired and motivated by you, and I feel really grateful. This episode will probably come out in April, but I feel really grateful that during Women's History Month, I got to talk to two women who are changing history. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good day to both of you. I appreciate you. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that interview. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional care from a doctor or otherwise qualified health professional. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it is not a replacement for medical or other health-related services. If you're looking for help in your health journey, seek out a qualified practitioner. See you next time.